Hello, deck lovers, decktators. Hello, deckheads. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Hello, Hit the Deck fans. I am the American Rhino, Gary McComiskey, and today I'm very excited about what we are about to do, because today, at long last, after lots and lots of time designing and acquiring materials, I am going to build a scoreboard. Well, scoreboard is perhaps not the most accurate. What I am going to actually build is an enclosure, a portable enclosure for a television, which can display a scoreboard courtesy of my iPhone. Of me iPhone. So, I am going to assemble the following materials into a scoreboard. And here we go. Okay, so first things first, you're going to want one of these big beefy bad boys. This is a Stanley FatMax. It is a portable power source. It is very versatile. And even if you are not going to be building a portable scoreboard, I highly recommend grabbing one of these. It's very handy to have, and you will no doubt find a use for it at some point. So we begin with this briefcase. Now, I have chosen a briefcase that I believe will be sturdy enough to handle the television that I am going to mount into it, but also lightweight enough and frankly cheap enough to make this project worthwhile. The television in question is going to be this Magnavox television, which I picked up on, I don't know, eBay maybe a few years ago for another project, and I am repurposing into this. It's small, it's already a little bit beat up, it's an LED, I think it's going to work out for this project very well. Now, unfortunately, it's a bit wider than the briefcase, so I'm going to have to pop out some panels as the first thing I do on this project. For that, I'm going to need a utility knife and probably a little bit of patience. So here we go. So now what I'm going to need to do is bang out these panels because they're stuck in pretty well. I guess this is a pretty well-made briefcase. So good on me for choosing it, I suppose. But here we go. I'm going to take this hammer and screwdriver and just kind of try and get it out. Please stand by for one moment. Alright, so let me catch you up on what just happened. Basically, what I thought was going to be thin plastic for the outside of the case wound up being medium density fiberboard, which is good on them for the construction of the case because it's pretty thick. But unfortunately, it meant I couldn't just pop out the bits that I was going to pop out as intended. I had to get out the trusty Sawzall, or reciprocating saw, for those of you who want to be technical. And so I am going to now, as I have completed my task, you can see I popped out the front and sideboards. You can see now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just size up the TV in the case, and if I've measured things correctly, then this should work. And if I haven't, then it won't. I mean, that's a simple binary situation. A little bit of MDF left in the crease, so I'm going to have to pull that out. Okay, so I did have to widen the case a little bit, but fortunately for me, the aluminum that makes up the case is pretty thin, so I was able to widen it without much problem. So now that I know that I'm going to be able to put the TV through with no problem, I'm going to size up the plexiglass that is going to be protecting the screen. Now, I hope to have it recessed enough that it's not going to be much of an issue, but better safe than sorry, because I certainly don't want a cracked scoreboard from an errant shot or even something else. So what I'm going to do is, mostly I'm going to eyeball it, and I'm going to mark it off with this pencil right here. And then I'm going to score it. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to size it now properly, now that I've cut it. Yeah, that sits in there pretty well. Way to go, eyeball. So now what I'm going to do is take off the protective covering, and I'm going to lay in some double-sided tape to keep it in there. Now, you may be saying, sure, the extra weight from the TV pressed up against it will be more than enough to hold it there, and that may be true, but I don't want to take a chance because I only have one chance to do this right, so I'm going to do it right. Take off the other side. And Viola. You can barely see it, which is the point, right? So now I'll get my double-sided tape. I think gonna cut this in half because we only really need to do about half for each side, each edge. So I'll size it out, get to about there. I will get a scissor, snip, then right down the middle. I thought I could be quick and cheat, but I should probably just do the whole thing with the scissor. I don't want to rip it because I don't think that that's going to result in a good straight line, and I think it's going to be more trouble than it's worth, so I'll just do it the right way. Even if it does take a little longer, I think I'm going to save time in the long run by doing it this way. All right. Ready to lay it in. And lay in the plexi. Hooray! Now we have a nice clear bit of business for our case. So now that we know that slots in, bring in the TV! And yay! That means that part 1 is finished. And we have our scoreboard in theory. But there's miles to go before we sleep. All right, so this is done now, but I say to myself, I've got this cable, this power cable just coming out of the side, and I got nothing to do. So what do? I decide to draw this little square on the side, and that's the hole that I'm going to cut out for access for the power cable and for the HDMI cable that's going in there. So I'll see you in a minute. And voila! Well, I'm not going to call it a clean cut, but a cut nonetheless, which I will now slip the power through, and power cable goes through, which means it was sized correctly, which I'm happy about. And then there you are. And I will insert the HDMI cable later when the whole thing is finished. Actually, if you want, you can get a view of the TV mounted in the case here. So you'll get a better idea of what we're going to do next, which is to put in the supports for the case itself. So this is the exciting part, and I guess here we go. Said supports are going to be these very, very large eye bolts. They're 14 inches. They're the longest I could get. And they're still not quite long enough, but I've accounted for that. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up where they're going to live in the case. So basically, I want to use them in part to trap the TV from moving side to side so it can't fall out. It's also going to be the main support for the case. So what I'm going to have to do is I am going to mark off where in the case they are going to be, which will be right in the middle. And so I will need a pen or a pencil, which works just as well. So you can't see it because of the angle, but I'm going to mark it in the center of the bottom of the case where it's going to go. Lined up roughly center there. And then I am going to do the same thing on the other side. Lined up again, roughly center. So we're going to say here. I'm eyeballing it. I should probably be measuring it, but I'm an impetuous youth, so what are you going to do? And now I'm going to take the case out and drill some holes. All right, so I've made the holes. Unfortunately, they require a 5/8 bit for the eye bolt, which I did not have. So I had to improvise with a little bit of finesse and one of my fine work instruments. But the holes are now drilled and I am ready to begin insertion of these bad boys. So what we're going to do here is, first you can see that I have this very, very large nut on the eye bolt already, and that is going to be mated with one of these oversized washers. So now I'm going to insert, as you might have guessed, insert this eye bolt in the hole. Now it's going to be ducked down further here than it's going to be ultimately, because what I'm going to need to do is this eye bolt, the top of the eye bolt is going to be part of the support system for this entire case. So what's going to need to happen is that I am going to need to basically, I'm going to need to size exactly where it needs to be cut in order to make it functional. So unfortunately, I can't just put it in and be done. But we're close. We're actually very close. I'm going to actually make the eye bolt, I believe, you can't really see. I'm going to make it this way, which might seem counterintuitive, but the reason I'm doing that is that those eye bolts are not actually going to be the things that this case will be supported from. They're only going to be part of it. No, what's actually going to be supported is these anchor shackles. So let me just give you an idea of what's going to happen here. So I'm going to drill through this case so that I can get the anchor shackle down through and only have the top peeking out. The anchor shackle will be going down over these eye bolts like so, and it's actually these that will be sticking out of the top. So this is actually going to require a little bit more finesse. A little bit more finesse, I think. So I'll see you in a few minutes. And we're back. Okay, so you will be pleased to know that after some very, very tedious banging and drilling and banging some more, we have a couple of anchor shackles very securely fastened down to, let's see if I can get it, fastened down to our eye bolts in here. You can see, not going anywhere. All right, so now comes the fun part. And by fun, I mean the part where we're almost finished. So if you take a look down here at the bottom of the case, you can see our eye bolts sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna slap on a couple more of these very, very sturdy washers. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but in order to get a good strong hole and make room for the washer, I had to pop off one of these feet. It's okay, we're not going to miss it. This is never going to be used as a briefcase again. Not that it ever really was to begin with. I did actually store some of my stuff in there for a time until I was ready to start the project, but I don't really think that counts. Do you? Well, maybe you can tell me in the comments. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of this Loctite on there, just a touch on the threads so that they don't move especially. I don't want to put on too much because I want this to be able to be taken off if necessary, but I do want a little bit on there just so it stays secure. So that's what I'm doing here, putting a little bit of Loctite on the threads. Bob's your uncle, there we are. So now, Bob is actually my uncle. I don't know if you're aware of that. Why would you be aware of that? That's a silly thing to say. Okay, so on go the giant nuts right down to the edge there. These are actually large nuts, but not the largest nuts that I have the capacity for turning. I actually have a very, very large wrench that I'm not using for this project because I really have no need for it on this project. But if I needed to, I could definitely... I could basically, you know those nuts that they have on like light poles and, you know, stadium lights and what have you? I have a wrench that could undo those if I wanted to. I'm not, because I'm not like a terrorist or, you know, any kind of serial defacer or destroyer of property. But I could. You know, it's nice knowing that you can. It's the thought that counts. Okay, so those are down pretty firmly. What I'm going to do on the other side of this is just tighten these down so that we have a nice, very tight, very tight fit on both sides. And that way, this is not going to move since, as I mentioned, this is what is going to be supporting the entire thing. The whole shebang, as it were. That is quite a shebang, I must say. What is a shebang, anyway? Nobody knows. I'm sure somebody knows. I'm sure there's some professor or person of great literary distinction that could tell me, oh, you know, a shebang, the reason they say the great shebang is actually because a shebang is the great shebang. What is this, like the Great Gazoo? This is the big shebang theory. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm talking so much. I think I'm just excited because I've been wanting to do this for a long time and it's finally coming to fruition. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, this part is actually very exciting for me. We're going to close up the case. We're going to close up this case and latch it. Not permanently, because we're going to need to get back in here to secure the HDMI cable. But I'm going to close it for now, partly proof of concept to make sure that I can. Hey, look at that! It is a TV in a case, and this is not the last step, but it is a very important step. No, actually what we're going to do now is, I tell you what, I have this banding, this metal banding that I was going to put around it to secure it, but there's very little clearance on the edges, as you can see. And honestly, it's a pretty tight fit with the latches. So for now, I think I'm gonna just trust that it's going to stay closed. Maybe I can find a clamp of some sort to hold it tight, hold it closed in the future. But for now, I think we're gonna forego the banding. I hope that does not come back to bite me. So the very last step is going to be these carabiners, which I am going to put on to hold this case to what's ultimately going to be a fence. Chain link fence is what we're going to be using for this. So I'm going to put two links on each anchor shackle because we want redundancy. Very important. And so there's one, and move this in a little bit so you can see it a little better. There's one, and gonna be this is close clearance, so it's gonna take a little bit of doing. I'm gonna be able to do it. It's gonna take a little bit of doing. There we go, that's two. Just slide this back up here, and then when I'm ready, I can just snap these onto the fence, and it should hang. They spin so it secures it down. And there we go, that's one. And then the other side. I have two more for the other side. Didn't think I'd bring one shackle. Come on. Not for climbing is what it says. I don't plan to do any climbing with these. So I've got that going for me. And I'm done! Yes! It's alive! Alive! So yeah, now I have this pretty sweet portable scoreboard. Oh, we did it! I mean, I did it, but your support was really invaluable. So I appreciate it, and let's go out and see how it performs, shall we? Hey, it works! Game on! Thanks, everybody.